Good afternoon. It's Sunday the 27th of April and I'm recovering from COVID a bit. It's been a while since we spoke, so we'll do a quick recap. So I think we last caught up around here. So we were just trading at previous quarter's value low and we ended up consolidating here for about a week. And then we got quite a nice puke on the previous week's open on this Sunday evening. So just to recap, this was probably a decent entry. We'll come to the composite structure in a moment. And then it's margin higher. So we've moved up to the levels we talked about last time, which were yearly VWAP and previous quarter's VWAP. So from a VWAP perspective, we're obviously now rotational on the year, and we're just hovering above previous quarter's VWAP at the moment. So, the move we talked about last time, which was, granted a couple of weeks ago, has largely played out now. So the question is, what happens next? So purely from a VWAP perspective, we are shifting back to rotational in the developing week, and looks as though we're sort of finding acceptance back within this local composite structure, which is just a couple of days of balance between last sort of Wednesday and Friday. So there are some sort of signs of potentially a bit of weakness here. We have obviously, so from a composite structure perspective, let's just quickly recap. So obviously we balanced up here for a few months, and we formed a couple of months of balance lower down between the two sort of high time frame composite structures. So the 8-month that we formed last year and the 3-month that we formed early this year, or into the early part of this year. So are we now finding acceptance within this composite, in which case we're rotational up to sort of 105k at least, or is this actually just a range? Can we expect a revisit to the mid-80s? I would suggest are the two scenarios to be watching for. So as things developed last week, so we had this push into the 20-day and rejected here. So this would have been a decent area to look for, a short back into previous values. So that's happened, and it now looks as though we're bleeding back into this local area of consolidation. So I'm expecting rotation now down to sort of 93k area. And this, I think, is where we need to hold if we're going to see more upside. So you can make a bullish case here, a bearish case here, because we have failed at this composite and potentially we're now shifting back into this structure and the developing week's value. But I think as long as this area holds, it makes sense to be cautiously bullish. So potentially there's a long entry around the high 92s in this area. And then the more conservative long would now be if we find acceptance back within this 20-day composite, in which case, we can play a day trade at least up to the 20-day composite high at 98k, and then see if we complete the rotation up to the developing year's value high at around 100k, which would essentially complete this rotation, right? So those are the two sort of, well, that's the bullish scenario I'd be looking for, complete rotation up to 100k. Spot books largely in favor of the bulls right now, but I wouldn't lean on that too heavily. It could be that this is a mean reversion trade and the mean reversion is done, right? So SPX mean reverting, gold mean reverting to the downside. Is the sort of mean reversion of risk done, or do we see continued upside? Not sure yet. So that's a bullish scenario. If we lose this 2.5-day structure, this 3-day structure, then I think we're probably in more trouble. And in that case, I'd probably think that the move is done and we're likely to rotate back to the sort of 85, 86k area, given that we have some confluence at that area being previous quarter's value low and previous month's VWAP. I think the 88 to 89k retest is not one I would want to buy personally. So yes, you can make the case there's support here. We've got previous month's value high, what will be previous week's value low, and the local sort of composite structure. But I think in that case we probably go towards 85, 86 and retest this consolidation lower down. So either this local structure holds and we go higher, or I think we're going to see a deeper correction. In which case, how would I trade that? If we get a breakout below this structure and then retest from the underside, I think there's possibly a shorting opportunity. So that's the bearish scenario if it should materialize, and then I think we probably trade down to this area, previous month's VWAP perhaps, obviously there is potentially some support here, but in that case, we're then losing the 3-month composite low again. So I think this is the level you need to see hold for bullish continuation. So yeah, personally, I'm going to look for a long around 93k and then potentially to compound or take a shorter term trade in this 20-day composite up to 98. And if we should lose this, then I'll be looking to take a short. Simple as that. So quite nice sort of tight consolidation here that we can use to inform a bias coming into the new week. That's it for BTC, I think, for now. So bullish scenario, this holds, reclaim, targets here and here. Bearish scenario, breakdown, looks play on an underside retest here, targeting at least 88 to 89 and probably 85 to 6, I would say. And that's it for BTC. So let's take a look at some other stuff. So Solana is the one thing I did have open from when I took some time off. So we got that return into the, well, let's just zoom out. No need to be zoomed in on this. So 8 months of balance last year, similar to BTC. We've really just been trading around this for, the best part of, well, over a year now. So on this reclaim, we had the confluence of previous month's value low and the 8-month composite, obviously trading now above the 30-day rolling. So multi-month composite lows held as support, and we're just looking for a rotation up to the multi-month composite highs. And I suggested, I think last time we spoke, that this area around 150, 152 was going to be key resistance, given that we have two overlapping value area lows and highs here. So we've got February's value area low and March's value area high. And this is the first time this area had been tested since we broke down in March. So we have found resistance at this area, and we have lost this local consolidation, but we have formed demand around the 140 area. So this area around 140 looks quite important. We've got the developing month's value high, previous month's VWAP, and this imbalance and demand here. So anywhere around this area, I think is going to be an interesting spot to look to buy, and looking for continuation up to this 170 level. Again, right, you can make the bearish scenario, a bearish case here, given that this failure at resistance, but the trend is to the upside now. So unless we lose a developing month's value and perhaps bleed back below 138, I think I'd be leaning bullish on this. And similarly to BTC, there's potentially an entry here, and then you could look to compound on a reclaim of this this area of value. And then a breakout above would potentially lead to at least the multi-month composite highs at 168, and then potentially March's high, which is at around 180. So those are the sort of upside targets for Solana, and there's quite clearly defined ways in. Should we retest this area around 140? So that is it for Sol. Quite straightforward. Could have taken the short last week on this bearish reclaim of this composite and previous month's value high, but yeah, depends how aggressively you're trading it. Other coins, Hype was looking strong before I went away, lost momentum somewhat, but again, it looks fine. I mean, there was a good entry here last time, and we talked about moving to this area of supply, so that's played out. I think we have potentially got strong support around 1678. So we've got previous month's value high and the developing month's value high, and this composite structure which held support on this retest here. So can we get a retest around 2050, which is this 2-month composite low? Potentially. If this area holds a support, that would be the logical next upside target, and then if we can get it inside that, we're potentially looking up towards the POC and potentially 25. But level to level, it's kind of, does 1680 hold, in which case we can target 2050, or does the market sort of roll over? I think this is probably contingent on what happens with BTC, as most things are. But if we should bleed back into this area of value and become rotational on the developing month again, then we're probably looking in towards these VWAPs and possibly as low as monthly value low, which I think would be a really good buying opportunity if it comes, but I'm skeptical as to whether it will. right? Generally, when a coin is showing strength, it's not going to give you a really nice re-entry, on a sort of 80% retracement early into a move. So I'm skeptical as to whether we get to buy lower prices on hype again, and shorter term, or in terms of medium time frames, the key level to hold is going to be around here. And if this can hold, then we can target up towards the 2-month composite low and potentially February's value low. But we'll see how that one plays out. So it still looks good to me. It still looks good. Obviously, it's lost some momentum for the time being, but it's not, there's no bearish momentum. It's just consolidating really and kind of potentially flagging, right? So I don't mind the way hype is looking at the moment. Fartcoin was also doing well and looks good locally. So I think last time I looked at it was on this sell-off, and then I've been away. But reclaimed value moved up towards this area of resistance, this low volume node, left behind some sort of relatively equal highs. So I think this still looks quite good. I think this low we put into this imbalance is likely to hold now. So obviously imbalanced up on the month and against this composite having deviated below it. So yeah, any low time frame dips now, obviously we formed some demand here, ought to be defended, I would suggest, for a move up towards this kind of local range high and the LVN around 125-ish, but probably just makes sense to target that high for the month to date, and then see what happens in this area. If we can get above this LVN, then we're probably going significantly higher, but this is going to be likely to be key resistance, I would suggest. So yeah, I mean, if we can get above that, then we're probably looking up towards this January high and this naked value high, lining up around 160. So we'll see, but nothing to be concerned about. I was again clearly in a strong bullish trend. And as of so far, this low looks pretty good. So I still like the way this is looking. And then obviously a number of other alts moved strongly while I was away last week. So I think the AI coins looks like they put in some decent moves. AI16Z, for example, there were lots of coins that pulled sort of 2x's in a short period of time. This one reclaimed previous value, gave that return pullback into a nice imbalance here and the monthly value high. So this is a really nice setup. If you took it around 17 even, or even here was another good opportunity on that Monday last week. But losing momentum now, consolidating, I'd potentially be looking for a retest lower down somewhere to get into this. But everything's going to depend what happens with BTC. So we'll just have to see. I'm going to be taking it relatively easy this week and just sort of easing back into things. I don't want to overload myself, having been away for stress-related reasons for a few days. So I'm just going to take it easy and see what sets up, and just take, if there are easy trades to take, I'll potentially be taking them. If we end up having a sort of choppy consolidation in this area and it looks quite distributive, I'll probably just sit out for the week. It's possible that we end up distributing up here, potentially grind a bit higher. It's kind of one of the scenarios I have in mind, but I'm very much open-minded as to what might happen here. I think we just need to be reactive. This could even be the top. This could conceivably be the local top before you end up retesting significantly lower and bleeding back down for a week or two into that mid 80k area. But as I say, I think it makes sense to remain bullish while we're trading above this local composite. So that would be my sort of preferred scenario, but we'll just have to see. I think that's it for now, guys. So I'm losing my voice. I will speak to you